Hello, I'm Brent. I'm coming to you today from our little farm called Valley View Acres, located in Logan, Utah, in the beautiful Cache Valley of northern Utah. Today we're going to begin our episode about how to grow hulless wheat on a small plot of ground. Last year we made one on growing wheat on a small plot of ground, but we was not able to get any hulless wheat for seed last year. So we're going to do it again this year. We was able to find some hulless seed. It was kind of difficult to find, but we found some, so we're going to do it again this year. Those of you who watched last year, you will remember that I mentioned my wife and I both have celiac disease, and so we have to eat gluten-free. And we decided that we wanted to try growing some oats to supplement our gluten-free diet. And so that's why we're doing this. Last year, I got many comments from some of you who probably watched that about different aspects of the video. The most common comment that I got was about how rusty and dull the scythe and sickle were that I tried to use to harvest the oats. If we do that this year, I will have those two tools cleaned up and in better shape to use. So I thank you for your comments last year. Some of them were quite comical. This year, the piece of ground that we're going to grow on is a different piece of ground than we had last year. It's this piece right here behind me. This piece is about 12 feet by 60 feet. So it's pretty close to the same size as what we did last year. Today is May 31st, so it's a little late to be planting the oats, but we had a hard, long winter here in Cache Valley this year, and by the time the snow finally melted and the ground dried up enough that I could get it tilled, it put us to the end of May. So we hope that we will have enough season to do this year. I'm going to take the camera and move it over here and show you how I planted this. I don't have a planter for a small plot, so I just broadcast it by hand. So we'll move over here and I'll show you how I do that. I've just about finished planting the oats, but let me show you how I do it. I just take a handful of the oats and just scatter it around like that, work my way around the field. And that worked good last year, so we'll see how it works this year. Let me show you up close how that looks. Now what I plan to do is I'll take this, and now that I've got it all seeded, I'll take a rake and I'll just rake through it, and that'll kind of help bury some of the kernels of oats. And then after I've raked it, I'll cut some grass clippings and sprinkle it with grass clippings, and that will help hold the moisture in it for germination. So we're going to go ahead and get that finished, and then we will make some clips during the summer on how it's growing, and then at the end of the summer we'll harvest it once again like we did last year and see how it turns out. So I hope that you will enjoy following growing hulless oats on a small plot of ground. Since I told you that I like to spread a little layer of grass over top of the oats to hold the moisture, I thought I would show you how I do that. So I've been out cutting some grass here in the yard. I've got the grass clippings here ready to go. So what I do, I just take a handful, come along here and just shake it. You want to be careful that you don't get it too thick, otherwise it'll smother the oats when they're trying to come up. But you want it thick enough so that it will hold the moisture in. So I probably put about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch of grass cuttings on here, and that seems to work pretty well. I thought we was going to get some storm and that would water the the oats for me, and that's why I really wanted to get the grass cuttings on here so that I could take advantage of the storm. But it hasn't stormed and it doesn't look like it's going to, so I'll finish getting the grass cuttings on here and then I'll put some water on it, and I would like to show you how I'm going to water these oats. So I'll be back with you in just a few minutes. The grass is down and we're now ready to water. Now, I'm not any kind of a rocket scientist or anything, so I haven't came up with some great invention for watering this, but I have came up with a simple little device that I used last year, and it worked pretty good. So I've just taken 3/4 inch PVC. I drill a hole, about a 1/16 inch hole, and I drill one every 6 inches along the PVC. I do that on both sides, and then I'll hook this up to the hose and turn it on. And here at Valley View Acres, we do our watering from a well, and it's a good well, but it has very low pressure. So we don't have enough pressure to really water with a sprinkler or something. But with this method, that low pressure will just squirt a little bit of water out of each of these holes, and it'll water a section along this PVC pipe about 3 feet out each side of the pipe in just a few hours period of time. So let me go ahead and hook this up and I'll show you how it works. I've got the water on and you can see how this little system works. I'll leave that for a few hours and then I'll move it over to another part of the field or of the little plot that we're planting. Good morning. Today is August the 18th and summer is passing very quickly. I thought I would make a couple of updates during the summer on how the oats over here was growing, but it just didn't seem like there was much to show, so I didn't do it. But today I wanted to show you that the oats are starting to turn color. They're getting closer to time to harvest. I just finished irrigating them, and that'll probably be the last time I put water on them. And so we will be harvesting soon. Those of you who watched last year's video, you might remember that I might have waited a little too long to do the harvest. I got a lot of comments from you, the viewers, and I appreciate those comments. But your comments and my own feelings also is that I probably let the oats last year get a little too dry before I harvested them, and that was one of the reasons why we knocked so many of the heads off during the harvest. So this year I'm going to try and do it a little earlier. I've read some articles that talk about harvesting, and it says to do it while the grain is still soft, and then after you cut it, let it cure for a while before you thrash it. So I think that's what we'll try this year. The oats look pretty good right now. The last time we did a segment, we had just planted them and scattered grass over the top of it. After we did that, the birds moved in, and the birds ate a lot of the seed. And so the oats are not as thick as we had hoped they would be. But I think we'll still get a pretty good harvest. And if it continues to dry as much as it's doing right now, we'll probably be harvesting maybe next week. So I wanted to do this update, and we will see you at the harvest. Good morning. The day of our harvest for our small patch of HULLESS Oats has finally arrived. Today is August 30th, and I've been watching the oats. They have changed color, but the hull is still a little soft if I pinch it with my fingernail, and I am hoping that they will stay on the stems a little better than last year. For those of you who watched last year's video on growing oats on a small patch, this is kind of a continuation of that. Well, last year we couldn't find any HULLESS oats, so we just planted regular oats to see how they would work. And the patch grew really well. We had some struggles harvesting it. If you want to watch that, you can watch last year's video. But we tried several ways of harvesting it. We ended up harvesting it with just some hedge trimmers. I just got down on my hands and knees and went out there and clipped them off and stacked it in little piles. And it took over an hour to do a little patch this size. And so we wanted to try something different this year. And one of the things that we did last year was I had this scythe that was my grandfather's. But last year, this was really rusty and ugly looking and wasn't very sharp. And so this year I had it sandblasted to remove all the rust off of it. And now I've got it sharpened up and ready to go. And so this is what we're going to try this year on our patch of oats. As I was mentioning about it being difficult to buy the oat seed, I might recommend, if you want to try this, that you just go online and try to find some HULLESS oat seed. Because we discovered if we went to any of the seed stores that they pretty much just sell to the large farmers in large quantities. They wouldn't sell a small amount to us. So we got it online and we've planted it this year. We showed you a few minutes ago the planting process and that. So now we're going to try harvesting it, and we're hoping that our sickle will work for us this year. So I'll go over here and give it a try. It's probably not cutting it quite as well as I had hoped, but last year we were knocking all of these heads off in the cutting process, and so I'm happy that the heads are staying on, and I think that I'll just practice a little bit more here because I would like to make the scythe work for us this year. So I'll go ahead and do some more cutting and get back to you on how that's going to work for us. Well, I finished with the harvest and the cutting of the oats. It didn't go quite as smooth as I thought it would do. I was going to use the scythe, but as I continued to work with it, I found that the grain was not laying down evenly like I wanted it to. It was kind of going all over the place. And so I went back to the hedge trimmers and used those, and I kind of went back and forth between the scythe and the hedge trimmers to get the job done. But I did get the job done. I've got it bundled up into some little bundles here. It's not going to be as big of a harvest as I had hoped for. I mentioned earlier how the birds had came in after I first put the seed down, and they ate a lot of the seed. And as I harvested the oats today, I realized that they were a lot thinner than I thought they were. So the harvest will probably not be as big as we hoped, but there's still a pretty fair amount here. I got 11 bundles. Last year, if you watched the video, I put the bundles in my greenhouse and let them dry in there, and that worked really well. But this year, I'm going to be out of town for a period of time, and the greenhouse is so hot. A day like today, it's in the 90s today, and a day like today, it'll be 140 in the greenhouse. And since I'm going to be gone for a little bit, I don't want the oats to dry too much or to dry too fast in the heat of the greenhouse. So I'm going to hang them in the cabin here. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'm going to hang them in there and let them dry. I think they'll dry a little slower that way and not quite so fast and be half cooked by the time they're dry. So I'll go ahead and hang those in there, and then I'll show you what that looks like. This has got to be one for the record books, hanging oats in a cabin to dry. but I guess we do what we have to do. But here is this year's crop of oats. They're hanging in here to finish drying and curing, and then we will do the threshing and the winnowing. So let's hope that they dry well here in the cabin. We're finally getting down to the thrashing stage of this project this year. Last time in our clip, we showed you that we had the oats hanging in the cabin to dry. I thought I would probably leave them there for about a week, but unfortunately they ended up being there for about a month. And so they're really dry now and they're ready to be thrashed. You might, if you watched last year's video, you saw how we thrashed our wheat, our oats last year. I used a board and I stapled a short nap piece of carpet on the board, and then a block with a short nap carpet stapled to the block. And then this is how I used to thrash it. So let me just show you how that's done. Now, one thing that I noticed is last year the heads came off of the straw really easy, but the bad thing with last year's is that it was just a regular oat. It wasn't a hulless oat. And so after the head came off of the straw, we could not get the inner part of the head out of it. It just held so tight that it wouldn't come out. And I don't know if you know about oats, but the head is made up of two parts. There's the hull, that's the outside part, and then the inside part that we eat is called the groat. And so with last year's crop being a regular oat and not a hulless oat, we could not get the hull off of the groat. And so all it was really good for was chicken feed. Now that was our purpose in doing this video this year, is to do a hulless oats so that we could see if the head and the hull would separate from each other. And so that's what we're finding out right now as we go through this. But also I'm finding out that the head hangs to the straw a lot better than it did on the regular oats. And that might be my fault for waiting so long to do this step on the oats, because they really are holding on there. But they do come off pretty good. And I'd like to show you the results here. I told you that I had 11 bundles. I've done 2 bundles so far. And if I get down in there, let me show you the hull and the groat are separating really good on this hulless kind. So once we're finished, I'll show you in a little bit the stage of blowing the hulls off of there, but it looks like that the groat in there is nice and clean and is going to be ready for us to eat. So we're really pleased about that part of it, but it is a little harder to get it to come off. So I'm going to go ahead and finish thrashing these oats and get them cleaned up, and when I get to that stage we'll do another clip and show you how it turned out. Good morning. It's now the next day. I didn't finish my thrashing yesterday because my hand got kind of tired of rubbing back and forth with this, but I came up with a better idea and I wanted to show you that before I finished the threshing. Instead of rubbing it by hand, I have this vibrating sander that I tried, and it's working pretty good. Let me show you how it works. That needs just a little bit more work, but it sure saves the hand, and it seems to take the grain out pretty fast. So I'll go ahead and finish up the thrashing, and then I'll show you how I winnow the grain. We finished the thrashing. I have 2 tubs like this full of hulls and groats that we now need to go to the next process. So after thrashing, the next process is called winnowing. Winnowing is when you separate the hulls from the groats. This can be done a number of different ways, and last year we experimented with several different ways, and the way we came up with that worked the best was to just use a shop vacuum and put it on the blower cycle and just blow this, and it blows most of the holes away. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do this. This works pretty good. I shake it a couple times during the process to get the groats to settle down, but let me come over and show you this. As you can see in here, the groats are starting to appear as the holes are getting blown away. There's a lot of groats in there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the process of winnowing here. And then after I'm finished with the winnowing, I'll show you the results of what we got from this year's harvest of HULLESS oats. So we finished the winnowing, and as you can see, the grain is quite nice and clean. It's a lot different than last year. Last year the hulls would not come off of the groats. This year they've separated quite nice, and so we pretty much just have clean groats in our basket today. One of the things though is, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the video, but we planted about 15 pounds of seed in our little patch, and I weighed this and we only have about 12 pounds here. So we didn't even quite make our seed back, and so that's a little bit discouraging. What we have looks good though, and I mentioned that birds ate about half of our seed, and so that made a big difference on our harvest also. I still have enough seed from what I bought this year to plant again next year, so I think I will do it again next year and see what happens. I probably won't video it next year because I think I've done about all I can do with the video, but I have enjoyed this experiment the last 2 years of trying to grow oats. I would just remind you once again though, if you do this, make sure you get the HULLESS oats, because those are the ones for human consumption. Now if you want it for chicken feed or something, the regular oats works fine. But this is what we got this year from our oats. It's been a lot of fun, and I thank you for watching and supporting our video.